has an academic background in education and 20 years of professional experience working in various positions in teaching, project management, and consultancy in the Middle East, Central Asia, Asia, and Africa. She joined Humanity and Inclusion as an inclusive education policy officer, and her role is to support technical programs in the Sahrawi camps, Chad, Uganda, and Kenya, Palestine, and Democratic Republic of Congo. She advocates for the education of children with disabilities via international networks and developed humanity and inclusion expertise and partnerships. Marine Sicre is a master in risk management and has 9 years of experience on disaster risk management for international NGOs in America, the Caribbean, and Oceania, and had worked as independent consultant and managing disaster preparedness for emergency response projects, and currently is working for Humanity and Inclusion on an inclusive DRM project in Madagascar. Welcome, Sandrine, and welcome, Marine. Thank you very much for joining us. We are, as I said, so pleased to have you here. And just to let you know, all of who are online, that we will have two 15 minutes presentation, and then we will have around 20 minutes for discussion. So please, Sandrine, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eduardo. Can we have the slide presentation?
Yes, I am going to do that now. Just one
Great.
second, please. Okay, this is share screen. Okay. It will appear very soon, I think. Do you see it? Okay, do you see now the presentation or just me?
Not yet, the two of us actually.
Okay, just one second.
But maybe waiting for the presentation to start. Just thank you very much to all who joined this webinar. So we are very happy with Humanity and Inclusion to present a little bit. So my presentation will be a little bit more on the health crisis that we are all going through with COVID, and trying to highlight a bit what was the response of HI and our recommendations. And then I'm really pleased to have Marine to join me for this presentation and show a little bit more about other type of crisis and more the disaster risk reduction aspect of it.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. It seems that I have no permission to share the screen. Can you help me with that, Salma? Because it said that when sharing the screen, I have no permission to do that. Sorry.
That's because you have to be the co-administrator, I think. So,
Luis, you need to
Yes.
share from where I made you the co-host. You cannot be sharing it from a different PC.
Yes, and sorry, because I only have one device with sound, and this is the computer, so the another one is the mobile phone. That is the reason why I wanted you to share that. Sorry, I will just fix that in a moment. So what to do?
you can make co-host Sandrine, and she will be able to share her screen.
Yeah, we'll try.
Sandrine, can you try now? Because you
Yeah.
are the co-host of this meeting.
Okay. I just did share my screen. Can you?
It came, yeah.
Yes, it's showing perfectly.
It's showing.
Hi, so
Okay.
sorry to interrupt. I need to broadcast this live on Facebook, so I need to be I need admin privileges. Selma, if you can check your WhatsApp messages.
So I'll have to make you the host, and you'll have to take over then, Gilani.
I'll revert back to you after broadcasting the meeting. That's what I indicated in the message. Because we in the poster we say to broadcast it live. So yeah.
I am so sorry about these technical issues. Sorry, Sandrine, and sorry all of you.
So we all learning. We're bridging the digital gap.
Hello, Santi there. Hello, Luis. Sorry, I'm joining you just now. I hope you hear me.
Yes.
Yes, my name is Shepard. I was struggling with internet connectivity this side, so I just couldn't log in good time. Otherwise, how are you? I hope the meeting hasn't gone too far.
No, we are just starting. We have some kind of technical issues. Oh, it's fine. So, Salma, what are we now? So can we just start the presentation, or what is the issue?
No, you can go ahead from our
Please,
side.
Sandrine, go ahead.
Oh,
sorry.
Okay. Fine. I just have all the meeting entrance, so I won't deal with that if somebody else can. All right, so let's start. So I'm really pleased to do this presentation, and I will try to go quickly to tell you a little bit about about the inclusive education sector within humanity and inclusion, and then also share a little bit about the critical issues that children with disability faced during the COVID crisis. Then try to show some of the responses that HI provided, and then do really a bit of advocacy for a more multi-sectoral approach. Humanity and inclusion. So we are present in 60 countries, but for inclusive education, we are just in 27 countries, mainly Africa, Asia, and Middle East. And we have around 50 projects. It varies quite a lot. Education in emergency is really a developing sector for the last 5 years, and we have currently 12 emergency projects. We were pretty proud of our programs because during the COVID crisis, 80% of them succeeded to adapt their activity to the COVID crisis. And we obviously also developed some specific responses, notably in Chad, Uganda, Kenya, Rwanda, and Mali. So maybe just to be precise what we mean by inclusive education within HI, we really think it's a whole education system that should consider the measure that we need to take to be able to provide an appropriate education for all children, ideally learning together. And when we say all children, we really want to insist that all means all. So all disability type, for example, including the ones that are less visible. So about the issues faced by children with disability, I really split it between pre, during, and post-COVID, because actually I wanted to share a couple of data that were BC, also because they seem old to me, but because they're before COVID. So 1 in 20 children under 14 years old has a moderate or severe disability. This is from the UNICEF World Report in 2013. We estimate that over 32 million school-age children with disability are out of school. So it represents 1/3 of the out of school population. We know that they are 2.5 times more likely to have never been in school compared to their peers without disabilities. We also know that they suffer from more violence. So it's estimated to be 3.7 times more affected than other children by any type of violence. So there were concerns before the crisis. The barriers for children with disability to access education are numerous. They are both at school, but also outside school, outside education system. It might be the poverty of the household, it might be the lack of access to health services, to assistive device technology. It might be the school is too far away and inaccessible, or it's a dangerous travel to school. And once they reach school, there's still some difficulties because the building might not be adapted, or the material is not adapted either, or there's a lack of preparation from the teacher. In some countries, there's still some segregated services, and the stigma that is both outside and in school. So when the COVID came, we had several concerns for children with disabilities. We already knew that a lot of them were out of school in low and middle income countries before the crisis, so that, for example, they would not benefit from all the services that were delivered via school. So every feeding program, health, MHPSS service that the organization and government would provide, they probably would not benefit from it. We kind of anticipated that they were more at risk of dropping out and being a victim of domestic violence. We knew that the learning continuity would be hampered because we really anticipated that they would lack the access to the information or the technology itself, or that some platform put in place at the time were not going to be adapted to children with disability. For example, many countries answered with the radio, which is nice, but of course for a deaf child, it's going to be really difficult to follow. We were also worried that they would be overlooked in the mainstream education response from governments and humanitarian actors. Plus, there were some specific issues linked to the COVID itself. We know, for example, that for people and children with disability, they were at greater risk of contracting COVID. And also it was really difficult to respect to get physical access, to hygiene facilities. You have a couple of illustrations on the slide that show you that, of course, if it's not at the right age, it's difficult, or there's a need to touch, for example, for people with visual impairment, a difficulty to respect the social distancing, because if you need some close assistance, it's difficult not to be close, and also very common, the difficulty to access the information if it's not in a language you can understand. All of this has been a little bit confirmed, unfortunately, by a recent report from Save the Children, who just launched the hidden impact of COVID-19 on children and families with disability. So it kind of demonstrated that her fears were realistic. So they found out, for example, that 7 in 10 children with disability needed homeschooling and learning material. That 6 in 10 children with disability had not received help from anybody, or that the parent felt that they had a lot of trouble to support. They were not in capacity to support those children. We also have concern for what's coming, because obviously there's going to be some learning not lost at best, but also we are a bit afraid that those children do not return to school. There will be, I guess, many accelerated learning initiative and digital solution, which is really nice, but we're a bit afraid that disability is the blind spot. We also anticipated some budget cuts in education following the economic crisis, and as we all know, education is very often a sector that is not prioritized. So we really think the crisis is the opportunity to build better, and we really want that to happen, but we hope it's going to be an inclusive, better future. And again, we are a bit scared that children with disability are not prioritized and are being left again behind. So just to share a couple of examples of the response that we provided. So depending the situation, if schools were open or not, but we obviously provided some health and hygiene awareness and provision of material in the educational settings, the distribution of sanitary kits for girls with and without disabilities. We trained the teacher to assess or to see if they could observe some sign of distress and refer children who needed it to psychosocial services. We also, when the schools were closed, pay attention to make sure that some alternative education modalities such as home learning were provided when it was needed. We also felt the need to mitigate the negative impact of the school closure, so to support the families that were more at risk, and try to do a lot of advocacy to mainstream humanitarian actors, asking them to really make sure that children with disability were part of their response. Another thing we worked at obviously was the digital gap. So we had a really nice example in Lebanon where HI together with the government and several departments of the ministry, so Ministry of Higher Education, but also the Center for Educational Research and Development, worked together to really try to provide some resources that were available also online, but also accessible for children with disabilities. So there were more or less three forms. There were some using the media like TV, for example, but they also used Zoom or free application like WhatsApp group, and also some non-technical material that were distributed to children who couldn't access a digital solution for a reason or another. So basically what we really would like to recommend is to you all is to ensure that you collect some disaggregated data by sex, age, and disability, to ensure that the education response plan are inclusive also of children with disability, to provide continuous teacher skills development. So obviously for teaching and learning, but also on the digital aspect or mental health aspect of children, to provide some learning material that are accessible for children with disability, to fast track the technological innovation and flexibility within school for the learners, obviously, but also for the teachers. And really recommend you to collaborate with organization of persons with disability, because it's necessary. Like they often say, nothing about us without us. So they're really good expertise to rely on, and a disability specific actor that can help you to make your programs inclusive. I would also like to advocate for a more multi-sectoral approach. So this is really something that we are insisting more and more in within HI, because we really realize that it just works better. Children are facing multiple barriers, so the response has to be coordinated if we want to tackle them. When you work in inclusive education, you know that it's always between three ministries or authority, between education, social affairs, and health. But with crisis, for example, like the COVID crisis, we need more, and livelihood or MHPSS are often very welcome to join. Just quickly to show an example from Nepal, they succeeded to really have sectoral collaboration in education projects. So they had it at higher level, at the federal level, with some multi-steering committees, but also at local level, especially for the mobilization of the network. And so several sector health, for example, the health in camps or referral services, the rehabilitation services, the psychosocial services, we're working together with social welfare. Because in the case of Nepal, when you have a disability, if you want to access any benefits or social welfare, you need to have a disability ID card. So it's usually necessary to do that for people, and then support with the livelihood, either by linking to some TVET program or providing some money, or linking to other actors. So I hope I didn't take too much time, but just closing reflection for us is really, we've learned a lot during the last months, and there are many things we can build on, like how we can use the radio effectively to reach out for out-of-school children, to have more flexibility in the curriculum, or have a better understanding of what's universal design. So it's not done yet broadly, but there really are cues for us to follow. Insist again that education for us is the first line of defense to mitigate the risk. And if we have this inclusive education approach, obviously useful for children with disability, but for all children, because when we know that there are 800 million children who cannot read worldwide, they also need universal design. It's not just for children with disability. So I think we really should all join this momentum to ensure a safe return to school to all children. And mitigate further risk. And I think it's just really our duty to make sure that now we all have this inclusive lens for learning, and that we prepare a more inclusive school with more resilient teacher.
Thank you, Sandrine. Thank you very much. For sure, people will have questions at the end. So now it's time to hear Marine. Marine, please.
Yeah, there will be plenty of resources in the PowerPoint that I'm showing very quickly now. But ETI just launched an advocacy report on this multi-sectoral aspect, so you will have all the links in the presentation.
Can we share the presentation indeed after this call with all the attendees?
Of course.
Thank you, Sandrine. Thank you very much.
Oui, bonjour à toutes et à tous. Donc, je vais vous présenter
Good morning to everyone. I'm going to share the experience of the inclusive project in Madagascar or Malagasy schools. I will present in French.
Avec l'anglais.
I am a little bit rusty with, my English is a little bit rusty.
Chris, are we waiting for the translator?
Yeah.
Okay.
The translator is translating.
Yes, it's the interpreter now doing the work. So Marine just can speak now, and the interpreter is going, just change the channel, please. So use the French or the English channel according to your needs.
Only English.
Only English. So the
Yes.
interpreter is now
English
ready.
for English, yeah.
English for English. Okay, thank you. So Marine, go ahead, please.
Thank you. So, good morning to everyone. I'm going to present the experience of RSC inclusive in the Malagasy schools, or the schools in Madagascar. Sorry, I'm going to present in French. My English is a bit rusty.
Tu peux continuer, Marine. Je pense que le traducteur le fait en simultané.
Tu peux changer de slide, s'il te plaît, merci.
Can you change the slide for me? Thank you. So Madagascar is one of the countries in the world with the most disaster risks because of floods and droughts. And we have about 1.5 cyclones every year that affects the country and has an impact on 2/3 of the Malagasy territory. For 4 years, the consortium Sicre, financed by the EU, is developing inclusive projects to strengthen local capacities of institutions and populations in disaster situations, to help schools in crisis situation and to contribute to a more efficient participation accessible to vulnerable groups. The project is implemented in the north and northwest of Madagascar, and we have hydrometeorological events, cyclones, and inundations. We need to
Cependant, on a un focus communautaire.
manage, the interpreter didn't hear that. we have a focus on three main axes: activities of the organization in different communities, and we have targeted actions with vulnerable households. We must make sure that actions are accessible to everyone, and we want to mention the possibility to transmit cyclone emergency news to all communities and to accompany them so that they can move towards zones of support. There's also the implementation of finance credit support, and those are microcredits that allow vulnerable people to have access to loans and to finance preparation activities. Then we have all the RSC activities supporting schools. The interpreter cannot hear. The multisectoral approach supports the structure to implement contingency plans, and the project contribute to participation of vulnerable group participation in those committees at all levels. The approach, the integrated approach of security at school has the objective to diminish risks linked to schools and allow to harmonize management plans to manage risks at all levels. This approach has three pillars. The objectives are to protect teachers and students of mortal risks, to carry on with the syllabus, even though there are dangers. The first pillar, the rehabilitation, is accessible to the school, and there are preparation teams, if the interpreter understood properly, linked to school installation security. There are technical propositions to have exercises. These are adapted to every school establishment, which means that the establishment can be in a flood area or not, access cultural contexts and risk management actions. We want to improve learning conditions to students, for teachers, especially for those with disabilities. We can use the example of the school on the right-hand side. It is a school, a local school in a safe area, but the rehabilitation will allow, or the school will allow the students to study in better conditions. We would like to improve the reception of evacuated people. The school is used as an emergency area to host vulnerable people, vulnerable to emergencies, to disasters. The project wills to rebuild the school on piles, on poles, so that people can be evacuated in case of floods. A good risk management needs risk analysis, identification of risk, people that are in risk areas, to have a good planning. Once the plan exists, we must maintain the plan activities, and the committee is responsible to implement the plan and to mobilize the community, the students, their families, to lead reduction risk actions. The members, the authorities in the region must work together and decide on solutions to help the community if we need to reduce interruption times of teaching, for instance, or to remove the students and move them to another school so that they are able to continue learning. The interpreter can't hear. The students learn through school and community, so there are activities and material that are made available to contribute the adoption of good behavior with the risk management theme. So we work with the third pillar to make sure that the actions are inclusive. We want to mention the strategy to implement some activities of RSC clubs for the community students or community children, the interpreter can't hear, and target children that are not in schools and that can have deficiencies. We also support schools with children with hearing deficiencies. We are working on extracurricular activities so that they can be accessible to all children, especially to those with disabilities. In terms of learning and challenges, and this might be the most important thing, you must know that in Madagascar, a high percentage of the population is vulnerable and is exposed to disasters. Teaching can be interrupted by many days during heavy rains or the raining season. You don't need a powerful cyclone to interrupt. You don't only need a strong cyclone to interrupt teaching or schools. So we need to be prepared for all the worst of scenarios, but also for reoccurring events. And those have a very powerful impact on schools, on the scholarization of children. There's also the problems of traditional beliefs that can limit the implementation of solutions that can provide the continuation of teaching, of schooling. We also need to have sustainable actions at school. And this is going to depend on the way on the way education authorities in the region will be able to continue to provide the necessary resources to monitor and support those actions. In areas where schools are emergency areas, hosting places. The communities are able to be evacuated and be hosted in those schools. Finally, I would like to share with you some beautiful stories that illustrate what I have just presented to you. Jacqueline is a mom, a family mom, and through her participation in town credits support was able to school her daughters and protect their school materials during floods. Then there is the story of this lady director of a school in a town in the north of Madagascar, who shows how the conscientization, the sensitization can reduce risks. She was able to mobilize the community, the entire community, to clean drains before raining season. In another example, in a rural community, we are building a boat that is accessible so that the population can face flooding, since the boat or those boats are priority tools to help the population at risk. In this community, for many months or weeks, some students and teachers cannot go to school because the road is flooded. So the project was able to provide this boat, and this will allow a schooling continuity. The interpreter can't hear. A buffalo had to be sacrificed for this project. Not yet. The interpreter cannot hear.
Thank you, Marine. Thank you very much for your presentation. Very interesting ideas. And thanks again, Sandrine. So we are now open for questions. Please feel free to raise your hand if you want to make a question. In the meantime, we have some people who have already sent the question by using the chat. And the first question, I believe, is for you both, is how to ensure the equity issue during COVID-19? Do you want to go first, Sandrine, to reflect on this?
Yeah, sure, with pleasure. So not sure exactly what is meant by equity, but we're always trying. I mean, when a child is arriving to a location, we don't select beneficiaries. We are just trying to respond to all the needs that we observe. So we're always going to have an inclusive approach, and using the twin track approach, if you're familiar with it. So we're going to look at the broader system and try to see how we're going to be able to improve the whole inclusivity of the system for all children, and obviously respond to specific needs that we observe. So definitely needs of children with disability, whether boys and girls, but also some other vulnerabilities whenever we can. And if it's out of reach because we don't have an expertise in everything, then we'll definitely try to refer to stakeholders. I hope it answered the question. If not, please.
Thanks, Sandrine. I believe so. Do you want a reflection on this, Marine? Do you want to say something? Is the interpreter available?
The interpreter is translating in French.
Okay,
yep.
So yes,
channel.
I am sorry asking just silly things, but I am not sure if Marine has already the question, and if she wants to
She's
reply.
muted. First of all, I think she's just muted now.
Rien de plus à rajouter.
No, nothing to add, nothing to share.
That is fine. I don't see more questions now in the chat, so I will take the chance to ask questions. I have really many, so people, please just send your questions. Otherwise, I will take the rest of the time asking questions for myself, and that is not fair with you. I was wondering, Sandrine, if you can elaborate a little bit on the challenges of securing the right to education in refugee camps. I know you have experience, you didn't really mention that in the presentation, but I know you have quite a lot of experience. So can you just share a little bit about your experience of what are really the particular challenges of working with people in these particular settings?
Yeah, sure. So I would say maybe it's counterintuitive, but I somehow find it easier sometime in emergency than in developed rural context because we usually have many more stakeholders. So it's easier to refer children to a place or another. And I remember the first time one day I read an article about Kakuma camps in Kenya, and they were talking about a resource center. And I was like, oh, it's surprising we're working in this resource center. And then I discovered that actually there were 4. And I was a bit surprised because maybe in the old Mali, we don't have that many. So I think it's really, for me, there are difficulties specific to camps, but I think it's also the opportunity to work better together. So more and more just to try to tackle the issue, we are working in consortium, not that consortium is such a scope, but we're really trying to have a broader consortium now to make sure that we coordinate properly and don't duplicate, and that we are in capacity to refer children when we cannot manage some specific issues.
Thanks, Sandrine. I have now a question for Marine. Marine, I was wondering if you can please reflect a little bit more about what we can learn or how can we translate the experience you have in Mozambique or the project has in Mozambique. To one extent, we can just, for example, implement similar strategies in other parts of the region or perhaps in other places in the world. What we can do, we can replicate, and what we really need to just rethink because maybe only works in the context of Mozambique.
Est-ce que vous pouvez répéter la question?
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, sorry if I wasn't clear. I will try my best. I was wondering, what can we learn and can we, from this learning, to apply in different contexts? I mean, issues that the project has raised in Mozambique, but that can be easily to be implemented in other parts of the region or in other parts of the world, and things that you consider that maybe only work in the context of Mozambique.
Très rapidement, en français, Marine, ce qui est réplicable ou ce qui ne l'est pas, à ton avis, d'un pays à l'autre?
Ok. D'abord, je pense que l'approche multisectorielle.
The multisectorial approach is fundamental. We have started to work late, to work with schools because of emergency situations. We were able to detect difficulties and needs that the school might have. We have to do a community risk analysis, and within these analysis, we do an analysis of all the members of the community. We realize or what the priorities are, and when the school
double problématique. Ensuite, je pense qu'il n'y a aucune recette miracle.
Sometimes we have two problems. We do not have a miracle solution.
Quand on arrive dans une zone,
When you work in a zone or an area, you need to understand how it works, how they believe, what is their culture, the risk dynamics, the local authorities, the education authorities, and then from that you can propose strategies that can be appropriate.
Réalité de l'école ou de la
For the community's environment and reality. In Madagascar, there is a lack of experience. RSC doesn't have much experience with schools. We have education community that can fill a disaster document, but they don't know that we can have preparation actions at schools, and with a little bit of resource, we can limit destruction, and we can have anticipated reflection to reduce teaching interruption risk. So we need to work with the community so that we can have quickly or fast impact on schools, and we need to have a vision of the program with strategic access. We need to work with education departments so that there are parallel dynamics that are complementary and that can be set up. Now, on the experience of Madagascar, there is a will to learn from financial technical partners, and we need to use this opportunity, even if in an operational way it is complicated, because you need to think about the team. You need weeks or months of reflection, including the specific and competent authorities.
Just to add, if you allow me, Marine, because you shared that with me when we were preparing, but I think you can have the technical input. It's not enough. And when we were discussing about the dugout canoe, you mentioned that in some area of Madagascar, even though the technical possibility was there, at the time the people were refusing it because there was a taboo about going on a canoe. So you had to negotiate with the traditional leader and everything, and they decided that maybe with the sacrifice of a buffalo it would be possible, but just having the technical solution wasn't enough for it to happen, because you had some issues with traditional beliefs.
For those of us who are not really familiar with these traditional practices, but what we can see, for example, this in other parts of the world, how culture and tradition can limit the opportunity to find a solution. Can you explain a little bit more about what these practices, how culture really constrain the possibility to find solution in a context such as Mozambique, or maybe drawing on other examples?
Marine, tu veux répondre?
J'y vais. Dans le cas de...
in the case of Madagascar, I'm going to give you two examples, one that will be linked to education and the other one not linked to education. In communities that face floods, you must imagine a huge pool of 30 square kilometers that floods slowly. And communities find themselves isolated. And you have like little islands in the middle of this pool, massive pool. And in some communities, through their beliefs, they don't accept the usage of boats or canoes, and the children are locked on their islands for months, weeks, because the school is on another island and they cannot get to school safely if they don't use, or if they are not provided with a boat, a canoe.
Toutes les croyances qu'il peut y avoir autour de l'inondation.
With the beliefs that people have around flooding or the need of flooding for family economy, or
inondable où il faut vous préparer pour un gros désastre, quand ils ont toujours vécu ça.
The community needs to be prepared, and when they find ways to live with those events and with also their traditions, you need to understand what their beliefs are, what can be done, what can't be done, and then you try and offer solutions. That takes time. And those are constraints that don't fit within the duration of the project.
And if I can elaborate a little bit more from other experience, I remember in Cambodia having issue with play, so offering play to children as a means for learning might seem obvious to us, but in the area where we went, people reacted strongly because game is associated with casino, so they were really scared that we would basically teach the children how to make money at the casino. So it just delayed a little bit because we had to re-explain really what we meant by playing, was educational playing. But there are so many opportunities of misunderstanding when you're not so familiar with the culture where you're working in. So I think really this encourage in the culture with the people you're working with is really, really key. And obviously within humanity and inclusion, about all the beliefs that people have around disability. This is something we're facing in every single project that we're working with everywhere. People have a belief, a strong idea, prejudices against disability. So it's important for us to get to know what those prejudices are so that we can create proper awareness raising sessions with communities and teachers. So some are commons, like in many countries, people are afraid that this is something they can catch or the children can catch. But many of the beliefs are linked also to the way the family is going to be treated, in particular the mother. So this is a first step in every HI project to work on those prejudices and beliefs around disability.
Thank you, Sandrine and Marine, for making that very clear. Culture and tradition sometimes are taken for granted, but we can do that if we really want to find a solution based on the experience of the community. So this is probably the last time for raising questions. So if any comment, please, it's time to do it now. So otherwise, I just really want to thank you, Sandrine and Marine, for making time for our webinar. Thank you for your contribution. Also, thank you to our colleagues from GCE in the Secretariat in South Africa, Salma and Filani, for facilitating this. Before leaving, I have a very special invitation for you all. I want to invite you to join the Disability Inclusive Education Forum, Reaching the Most Marginalized, commencing this Friday, 8 a.m. Eastern Time. It has a very interesting agenda. The focus of the forum is disability inclusive education, and we'll have an initial presentation, a speaker for 1 hour, and then you will have the opportunity to choose between different sessions, and there are sessions about exploring issues that Sandrine, for example, has explored today about the impact of COVID-19, what does it mean in the context of inclusive education, in different contexts of conflict or crisis, but you can also address issues about that is much related with what Marine had done today. So we are really clearly anticipating some of the issues that will be discussed this Friday. Thank you very much for that. And also there will be panels about service delivery and opportunities for advocacy. So our members, for sure, will have the opportunity to contribute that way. So if that's all from my side, I don't know, Marine and Sandrine, do you want to add something, final words?
No, they all really, thank you very much. I apologize to all of you because when I was sharing, I couldn't see your message, so I didn't put the full screen. So apologies for people who had difficulties following, but we will definitely share the slide and you will have all the links to the different reports and information that we share today. Thank you very much for your understanding and your presence.
Thanks, Sandrine. It's fair to say that it wasn't your fault. It was supposed me to share the screen. So thanks for your support also with that.
Okay.
Final words, Marine, do you want to add something?
Non,
Maybe
juste,
not. Oh,
non,
please.
vous remercier en fait de,
No, thank you very much.
De pouvoir voilà, partager
To be able to share
l'expérience qu'on est en train d'avoir.
the
Et puis
experience
c'est
that we
toujours intéressant d'avoir des questions qui nous aident à
have
réfléchir
at the moment, and it's important to be able to
Donc, merci.
speak about questions that lead us to reflect on things that we are busy doing at the moment.
Brilliant. Thank you very much to all of you, and hope to see you in our next community of practices. We will send you information soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Werner. Bye-bye.
Bye,
Thank you all.
Stay safe.
Thank you. Bye.